The most recent example of the fact that there is no longer such thing as free press,
it has officially become partisan press.
Viva Fry, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and this is Barney the Vlog Dog. How you doing today?
Smell funny.
I have done a couple of vlogs on what some might perceive to be the apparent corruption of media in Canada. I did one video breaking down and explaining the CBC, which is the Canada Broadcasting Company's lawsuit against the Conservative government the week before the federal elections. I'm going to link that video right here. The dog just burped. The dog actually just burped on camera. Good boy, that's my boy. So the bottom line of these allegations are that the Conservative Party of Canada made a 1 minute and 47 second political video during election season, which was itself a montage of excerpts from stuff that had appeared on the news. And what, in the good judgment of the CBC, is the best way to appear trustworthy, independent, and nonpartisan? Sue the Conservative Party of Canada for alleged copyright infringement.
Okay.
In a nutshell, that lawsuit was based on copyright infringement on the basis that the Conservative Party of Canada violated the CBC's copyright by using certain media clips in one of its political ads in the week leading up to the federal election. The CBC sought an injunction enjoining the Conservative Party of Canada to take down the video, which was itself a short montage of multiple CBC news clips. In another video, I broke down and explained Rebel Media and True North's lawsuit against the Leaders Debates Commissions, and if you haven't seen that video, in a nutshell, Rebel Media and True North sued the Leaders Debates Commission, which is the commission in charge of authorizing media accreditation to cover the federal election debates. The Leaders Debates Commission refused accreditation to Rebel Media and True North on the basis that they were not media but rather advocacy groups. I don't know how the Leaders Debates Commission go about authorizing or approving media to cover the event. All that I know is that when they denied a press pass or media accreditation to True North and Rebel Media, the stuff hit the fan. And in those videos, I highlighted what can be perceived by many to be the political corruption of what ought to be a free press. And because I have a large proportion of American subscribers, I did notice a lot of comments to the effect of, how could you have free press in Canada when you don't even have free speech? Touché, Americans. Touché. Well, today it is my turn to lay it on to you because apparently in the States,
You don't have free press either.
Sorry, I got a little excited right there. Let me just say that again more calmly. Today it's your turn, America, because apparently you do not have free press in the States either. And some of you might already be able to anticipate where I am going with this, but I am going to Michael Bloomberg's presidential run and the impact it is having on Bloomberg media. Okay, down you go. Hi-yo! Okay, and for those of you who might be living under a political rock, Michael Bloomberg recently announced that he is running for president for the Democratic Party. And for those of you who may not know this, and this is according to Wikipedia, Michael Bloomberg is the 88% owner of Bloomberg LP. Bloomberg LP is itself the owner of Bloomberg News, and Bloomberg News is, and I'm quoting, an international news agency headquartered in New York and a division of Bloomberg LP. Content produced by Bloomberg News is disseminated through Bloomberg Terminals, Bloomberg Television, Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Business, Bloomberg Markets, Bloomberg.com, and Bloomberg's mobile platforms. Since 2015, John Micklethwaite has served as editor-in-chief. Alright, and being a lawyer with a hypercritical mind and a hyperactive imagination, the first thing I thought when Michael Bloomberg announced that he was running for president is what impact is this going to have on his media empire? How can you have Bloomberg News reporting on current events when its owner is running for president? Not just that, to what degree is Bloomberg going to be able to exploit his international media empire for the purposes of his presidential run? Advertising is not cheap.
Unless you own the newspaper.
Alright, and at the risk of being accused of oversimplifying the economics of using your own newspaper for free advertising, there is something called the opportunity cost of doing so. That is to say, even if you give yourself the ads for free, you are taking the place of an otherwise paying customer. And so technically it's not free because you're actually losing revenue by doing it, but there is something to be said about losing revenue as opposed to going out of pocket with expenses. Side note, totally unrelated, that deer head that you see over my shoulder is not something I hunted and killed myself. It came with a cottage my parents bought 50 years ago, and the head itself had been there for something like 50 plus years, so that is an heirloom that I felt guilty throwing out, and I took it and put it up on my wall. I have never shot a deer. Back to the video. And incidentally, this is not an accusation or a critique, it's just an actual reality that one has to think about when someone like Bloomberg decides to run for president. It's something I've said in previous vlogs and I'll say it again in future vlogs. One of the most important things about being a lawyer is not knowing the answer, it's just knowing the questions to ask. And above and beyond any legal compliance issues, there's also just the matter-of-fact reality as to what impact this is going to have on the media empire. And fortuitously enough, as I'm contemplating all of the what-ifs and legal ramifications that may ensue from Bloomberg announcing he's running for president, a friend of mine sends me an article that confirms my most fundamental fear, that being when the press goes from free press to purely partisan press. Bloomberg will not investigate Mike Bloomberg or his Democratic rivals during primaries. Key points. Bloomberg News will refrain from investigating Mike Bloomberg or his Democratic rivals in the primaries, according to a memo obtained by CNBC. Mike Bloomberg officially entered the 2020 Democratic presidential race Sunday. Bloomberg News investigations into President Trump will proceed. I was a little reluctant to make this video because I know darn well that a lot of people are going to accuse me of partisan vlogging. But ultimately, there's nothing I can do about that. When I make videos on the impeachment hearings, I get accused of being a conservative. When I made a video on Don Cherry, I got accused of being a liberal. When I made the video explaining the Mike Ward decision, that Canadian comedian who was fined $42,000 by the Quebec Human Rights Tribunal, I was accused of being a lefty. And when I made the video explaining the Rebel Media lawsuit, I was accused of being conservative. The reality is that I'm relatively equally divided on what most people consider to be the standard litmus tests of either the left or the right. And I'm also thoroughly convinced that whenever I'm accused of being either left or right by an individual, that is as a result of their interpreting what I'm saying based on their own internal bias. It's not an insult or criticism at all, it's just the nature of the way we break down and analyze the world based on our own political and ideological perspective. Also, if I let those types of criticism paralyze me in terms of creating content, I'm not going to be able to create the content I want to create. Now, coming back to this memo that CNBC apparently obtained confirming that Bloomberg News, the Bloomberg media empire, is not going to investigate Mike Bloomberg in the context of the primaries, or probably ever for that matter. It's normal and entirely expected that Mike Bloomberg is not going to use his own media empire to investigate and potentially take down Mike Bloomberg in his presidential run. But it quickly enters that realm of what is Bloomberg News going to turn into? Is it going to turn into a mouthpiece for Mike Bloomberg in his presidential run? It's also not like Bloomberg can divest of whatever interest he has in Bloomberg News and plausibly say to the rest of the world that Bloomberg is now going to be objective in its analysis of the presidential campaign. It's a problem, and it's a decision Bloomberg had to make when announcing his presidential run, in that people are now going to perceive Bloomberg News as being a mouthpiece for a presidential candidate. But it goes even further than that. Not only is Bloomberg News not going to investigate Mike Bloomberg, which we all totally understand, but Bloomberg News is not even going to investigate the Democratic rivals in the context of the primaries. What does that turn that media organization into? With Mike Bloomberg officially entering the 2020 Democratic presidential race, Bloomberg News will refrain from investigating him and his Democratic rivals, according to a memo sent to editorial and research staff obtained by CNBC. Quote, "We will continue our tradition of not investigating Mike and his family and foundation, and we will extend the same policy to his rivals in the Democratic primaries. We cannot treat Mike's Democratic competitors differently from him," Editor-in-Chief John Micklethwait said in a memo, which was confirmed by a spokesperson. First of all, I never knew that Bloomberg News had an official policy pursuant to which they would not investigate Mike Bloomberg or his foundations, but it makes total sense. It's not just logical, but the inverse would be absurd to suggest that there would be journalists for Bloomberg News that would actually be investigating Mike Bloomberg and or his foundations. But when you start referring to that as a policy that is going to be extended to Democratic rivals in the context of a presidential election, it becomes an issue of politics. And I'm trying to figure out how this is going to play out in the context of the election. If one of the Democratic candidates accuses Elizabeth Warren of having misrepresented why she lost her job some 30 or 40 years ago, is Bloomberg News just going to say,
"We're not investigating that"?
And if they do in fact do that, have they not gone from being a media agency to being an absolute advocacy group? Some people are going to say, okay, well, you can still go to Bloomberg News to get your business news, but don't go there for politics if you want actual news. But can we plausibly continue to refer to this as free press when it has become fundamentally and to its core partisan press? Now, in fairness, I think we can all agree that all news agencies have their political perspective, their political spin, their political leanings. ABC, NBC, CNBC, MSNBC, CNN, I think we can all agree lean a little bit to the left. The flip side, you have Fox News, the Washington Free Beacon, the National Review, American Thinker, The Blaze. Oh yeah, and I totally forgot, Breitbart. But saying that a news outlet has a political leaning or an underlying political narrative is different than saying that they will not cover certain issues as a result of politics. Once you do something like that, you discredit yourself as being free press. And in fairness, even on Fox News, where you have the Carlson Tuckers, you also have the Judge Napolitanos and Shepard Smiths, who are vocal critics of President Trump from time to time. And bringing this back to law, although it applies to human nature, you know that people, generally speaking, are at their most honest when supporters criticize and when critics support. But if you were to come across a lawyer who simply says, I am not investigating anything that might make my client look bad, turn around, walk out the door, and run away as fast as you can, because that kind of lawyer is going to get you into trouble. There is no faster way for a lawyer to lose standing and credibility in front of a judge than to say, I don't care what my opponent has to say. I haven't looked into the case law that goes against my position, and I haven't submitted it to you for your consideration. That immediately renders the lawyer disingenuous and, above all else, untrustworthy. And that is effectively the policy that Bloomberg News has now officially adopted. Bloomberg News is effectively making it a formal policy to put party over country. And bear in mind how this might actually play out in real life. Let's just say that Bloomberg News stumbles across an audio recording akin to the NBC recording of Donald Trump from 10 plus years ago. They won't release it. And while there's a part of me that chalks this up to the hyper-political world in which we live, there's another part of me that thinks that this has always been the case, case. Going back to Mark Twain's expression, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes.
How beautiful is that?
There is a bigger part of me that is prepared to acknowledge that the world has probably always been like this to one degree or another. And we are only finding out about the full extent of it now because of the advent of the internet and the democratization of information.
And it's a beautiful thing.
You can't call yourself a lawyer if you are not prepared to explore and explain both sides of the debate. And you are going to run into big problems if you fail or deliberately refuse to look into the opposing side. Part of being a good lawyer is not only submitting the relevant case law, it's also submitting the bad case law so that you can distinguish from it. Because you might be able to hide some information from a judge, but if a judge ever finds out that you're concealing information from him or her, you are going to get nailed. They are either going to think you're stupid or malicious, both of which destroy a lawyer's reputation in the same way that it would destroy the reputation of a news agency to say we are simply not investigating into certain matters of political nature. And incidentally, if you are interested in learning about what the life of a young lawyer is like, I made a vlog on that subject. I'll link it right here. Give it a watch. A while back, I made a video called My Last Trial, A Day in the Life of a Lawyer, and there were a lot of questions in there that I said I would answer in a follow-up video. On the way, I saw a sign for a blood donor clinic, which is fantastic because I'm going to go give blood now. This is where they test for the iron, and this will give me a good 10 minutes to finish the follow-up vlog. Time to get ready for some bleeding. And if you like my channel and my content, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment in the comment section below if you want to support the channel. There's a PayPal link in the banner up there. I'll link the PayPal downstairs. I'll link the PayPal in the comment section below as well, along with links to merch if you should be so inclined. And now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!